Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Business Line's State of the Economy podcast. I am Amiti Sen. Since Monday, attention of many Indians has been glued to the happenings in neighboring Bangladesh. That was the day when former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, escaped from a country to take refuge in India after thousands of anti-government protesters marched to Dhaka demanding her ouster. While an interim government headed by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus is expected to take care of things and restore peace and order, unrest and uncertainty continues. Indian businesses who have dealings with Bangladesh are especially jittery about developments in the country as they are unsure about what the future holds. I have with me today noted economist Biswajit Dhar to help us understand a bit more clearly the import of the developments in Bangladesh for Indian exports and investments and for the economy at large, and also give us an idea of what could happen in the days ahead. Thanks, Professor Dhar, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Professor Dhar, to begin with, if we look at the Bangladesh economy, so since the last few years, it seems to have been doing pretty decently. It's on the path of graduating to developing country status. Its exports have been doing pretty well, especially of garments. So to what extent do you see the political turmoil in Bangladesh affecting its growth trajectory?
Yeah, I think it's only natural to expect that when there is political uncertainty of the kind that we have seen in Bangladesh, there is going to be economic uncertainty, and that is going to follow the kind of turmoil you're saying. Until and unless there is a stable government and all the major political stakeholders are on board. Now, this will certainly take some time. Now, for India, this period of uncertainty is particularly problematic, I would say, because trade with Bangladesh was actually growing. In fact, India's exports to Bangladesh, there's always been an issue about India's imports from Bangladesh, which has been very, very sticky, and they've been going up slowly. But exports certainly have been going up, and for India, Bangladesh had emerged as a major market. I mean, in 2021-22, Bangladesh was the fourth largest export market for India. Of course, subsequently has fallen. It's now last year it was the sixth largest, and the major change that has occurred was because of India's restrictions on exports of wheat and rice. Although when the Indian government imposed restrictions on wheat and rice exports, they said that neighboring countries and countries who need India's food grains for their food security purposes, they will be spared. But of course, the data doesn't suggest that wheat exports actually gone up quite significantly to about excess of $400 million in 22-23, and last year actually we exported nothing to Bangladesh. So that, like you said, that there was a lot of potential for India to expand its presence in Bangladesh, especially because of its growth trajectory. Bangladesh's per capita GDP had exceeded India's a few years back. And going forward, IMF expected that by 27-28, again, Bangladesh's GDP will be higher than that of India's. So really, India is looking at a larger market, expanding market, and really something, sort of a captive market because, Indian businesses had a lot of long-standing presence in that market, and they were actually expanding in that market. So really, in terms of trade, and especially when global trade is so sluggish, and the prospects of recession are getting deeper by the day, losing the sixth largest market, suddenly is going to be affecting Indian exports quite significantly.
Right, right. So, like you just pointed out that it could affect India's exports significantly, and India, although exports have gone down probably a little in the last couple of years, Bangladesh is still a significant market for India. So, and also Bangladesh is part of our supply chain, especially for something like the textiles industry. So, how worrisome is the situation for Indian exporters and importers at this moment of time? So right now, how worried do you think they should be? Because everything collapsed in the last few days since the former prime minister left the country. But now there is talks of an interim government coming in place. So given that situation, where does the Indian exporter and importer stand vis-a-vis their dealings with Bangladesh at the moment?
Yeah, Steve, like you mentioned that India is part of the value chain, Bangladesh's value chain. We are expecting a lot of yarn for the Bangladeshi garment industry. Now, the garment industry has actually suffered hugely in this political turmoil that we have seen. And as a result, this whole supply chain is going to get disrupted. Now, quite apart from exports of yarn, the exporters getting affected, a lot of Indian companies who have actually relocated themselves in Bangladesh in the garment sector, and they would also take the hit. Now, it's not very clear what is the situation, how much of losses they have suffered, because a lot of these, the report said that a lot of the garment factories have been burned down because the garment industry itself was split down the middle in terms of their political affiliations. So I suspect that along the lines of their political affiliations, there would be also the effect on the production unit. One doesn't know, but certainly, Bangladesh was being seen as a production hub for garments, which was being used by the Indian companies. So they're actually trying to piggyback on Bangladesh's success in garments and trying to access the international market. Now that is going to take a hit. So apart from that, there are a lot of quite a few FMCG companies who
That's
had
right. That's right. Yes.
relocated there. So
Mhm.
if you look at the export numbers don't tell a whole story, because a lot of the trade has been actually replaced by domestic production there. So Indian companies have moved into Bangladesh. They're producing there, and obviously exports to Bangladesh in those commodities will fall. So there was a time when the SAFTA, even earlier when the SARC was formed, and we're talking about a South Asian, sort of regional integration. We're looking at the South Asia as a single economy, and with all these supply chains being established, Indian companies going to Bangladesh, Bangladeshi companies coming to India. Now, all that seemed to have started to happen. I won't say that it had happened in a big scale, because in Bangladeshi companies didn't come to India that way, but Indian companies did. So in terms of South Asian integration, or at least India-Bangladesh integration, we had taken a big step. And the next thing that was being talked about between the two countries is, negotiating a SEPA, which would have really opened up a lot of vistas for cooperation between the two countries. Now that the SEPA discussion was with Hasina government. Now, how this is going to happen with the new government, I won't say Yunus government, but the government, interim government, Yunus as the head, one has to wait and watch.
Right. So you mentioned a couple of very interesting points. You mentioned FMCG companies, from India that are operating in Bangladesh. So apart from FMCG, we have lots of personal care companies. We have some automobile part companies there. So what kind of a hit do you think they are going to take? So will it be just restricted? Can we hope that it will be restricted to just, the manufacturing days lost right now when the agitation is going on until the interim government is in place? Or do you think it can, stretch beyond?
No, I think what is also happening is that a lot of these service sectors, especially the hospitality sector, and the medical services, some of these companies from the eastern part of the country, they were looking at opportunities to invest in Bangladesh. Again, see, this is something that had to happen naturally because the number of people coming to eastern region, especially Kolkata, for treatment has been substantial. So Indian companies, the number of these hospital chains, they have been talking to their Bangladeshi counterparts and the Bangladeshi government, looking for opportunities to open up businesses for them. So that is going to be a huge setback, at least in the short run, short to medium run. Then if you look at the IT companies, even the IT companies were moving into Bangladesh, and again the opportunities that were opening up because the same logic through which Indian IT services took advantage of the global, global market, which is, sort of low wage, skilled labor. That's also available in Bangladesh, and wage costs in Bangladesh are substantially lower than that in India. So naturally, these Indian companies have been going. Finally, I would say that there are also these infrastructure companies, the major companies, the big houses. They're also sort of looking forward to establish their footprint there, and that had a very significant sort of geopolitical thing linked to it, which is that China was expanding its presence in Bangladesh, and some of these Indian companies could have just gone into this infrastructure sector and establish their presence and given some kind of a competition to the Chinese companies there.
Right. So you also mentioned the SEPA, the free trade pact that India and Bangladesh have been talking about. So given the fact that Bangladesh exports to India is much lower than what India exports to the country, do you think the FTA would be more beneficial to Bangladesh to increase its exports, or India is also expected to gain? And if Bangladesh hopes to gain substantially from the FTA, can one hope that there would be support across party lines in the country, and once a new government comes in place in Bangladesh, the negotiations could go on?
I think SEPA actually gives an opportunity to the two countries to really explore the possibilities of expanding trade on both sides, exports and imports together. Now, as of now, we have only been talking about a lot of potential that Bangladesh has in exporting to India, but that got realized. So, like in all other FTAs, and the logic of these FTAs, and we have been talking about it, is that the two countries can sit together with their major stakeholders and find a way to expand businesses. And this is not just not trade; it's also investment. Trade in goods and services and investment as well, and also looking at all the barriers that exist between barriers on trade between the two countries. Bangladesh, a lot of our friends in Bangladesh have been constantly arguing that India imposes a lot of non-tariff barriers. Now, I think all these issues really be put on the table in the negotiations and then can be addressed comprehensively. And I always been very hopeful that a free trade agreement with Bangladesh is going to be really a win-win kind of a prospect for both countries. And I don't think anyone in India should have any businesses or any other the stakeholders in India should have any problem in India's forging a free trade deal with Bangladesh. I think it is only natural that we do such a deal with Bangladesh.
Right. My final question to you: what do you think the future holds for Indo-Bangladesh relations now that the Awami League, which was mostly being seen as being more friendly to India than the BNP? Now that the Awami League, that it doesn't seem that there is any chance of it, being part of the new government. So, how do you see, relationship, both strategic and economic, between India and Bangladesh, developing, especially, in terms of also the infrastructure projects that you mentioned, that China has been trying to come in, but there was a big chance for India to also make its presence felt. And there were also, I think, some infrastructure projects MOU signed between the two countries. So how do you see these things evolving in the future?
No, I think the strong economic relations that developed between the two countries and the expansion of sort of trade and other businesses that we are looking at. I think that this should be a strong enough logic for the new government to continue its relations, the kind of relation that we had with the Hasina government. Now, there are a lot of things that have happened in the past couple of years. For instance, India gave Bangladesh transshipment rights for its garments. So they've been using the Delhi airport, and it's been benefiting the Bangladeshi industry because they have a larger, opening to the global market. They can meet the schedules very easily. India was getting access to the Magla port and Chittagong port, so it was a mutually beneficial kind of an arrangement that was worked out. And so I think my expectation is that the strong economic relations and the prospects of this, the economic relations expanding and not too distant in future and continue at this kind of a rate, is going to persuade the new dispensation to forge close links with India. Now, of course, that's not to say that India will also have to make its effort. The government will have to reach out to Bangladesh because it's an extremely important country for us, both strategically and economically. And most importantly, I would say that, look, it is in India's interest to ensure that Bangladesh comes out of this political mess and, of course, the economic turmoil that we are actually witnessing now, and puts his house in order. And I say this because, whenever there is this kind of a problem, economic problem, and we have seen this the world over, of course, we have seen here in India and Bangladesh as well, there's a lot of illegal migration that takes place. Yeah. Now, when Bangladesh's economy started doing well, this only illegal migration sort of came down quite significantly. Now, no one in India would actually like a reversal of this situation. So I think it will be very important for us here in India, all concerned, to reach out, businesses to reach out at their own level. And of course, people like you have a big role to play in pointing out to both the sides, both the governments, as to what advantages are there for us to continue our relationship the way has been happening for the past two decades and more, so that this doesn't get interrupted because an internal problem has happened in Bangladesh.
Right. So, on that positive note, Professor Dhar, I thank you on behalf of our listeners for explaining with so much clarity the complex situation that has evolved in our neighboring country and what it means for Indian businesses. We certainly hope for early restoration of peace and order in the country. We will be back with more on this important matter very soon. Thanks for listening.